What if I told you that a quiet conversation in the Vatican could reshape the future of the Catholic Church? What if the echoes of ancient prayers are about to challenge modern decrees? For years, a deep tension has simmered within the Catholic Church, a quiet struggle over its very soul. At its heart lies the traditional Latin Mass, a form of worship that has nourished generations of saints and faithful. But in recent years, this ancient liturgy has faced increasing restrictions, leaving many devoted Catholics feeling marginalized and unheard. Now, a pivotal moment has arrived. In the hushed halls of the Vatican, Cardinal Burke, a staunch voice for tradition, has met directly with Pope Leo XIV. Their discussion, the future of the traditional Latin Mass. This isn't just about ritual. It's about identity, history, and the very direction of the Church. Could this be the turning point that countless Catholics have prayed for? The election of Pope Leo XIV brought with it a wave of anticipation, particularly among those who cherish the traditional Latin Mass. After years of stringent rules that made it increasingly difficult to access the older form of the Mass, often called the Mass of the Ages, many hoped Pope Leo's pontificate would signal a new chapter, one of healing and reconciliation. His election felt like a chance to mend divisions that had deepened under previous restrictions. Hope surged when Cardinal Burke, a figure widely respected by traditional Catholics, offered Pope Leo a warm public welcome. This gesture, far from being mere politeness, ignited whispers of a possible shift, perhaps even a restoration of the traditional Latin Mass to its rightful place within the Church. Naturally, Pope Leo's personal views on the liturgy have become a subject of intense speculation. Insiders and church observers offer vastly different opinions. Some believe he holds a deep personal respect for the traditional Latin Mass and the ancient form of worship it embodies, perhaps even celebrating it quietly himself during his time as a cardinal. Others argue he is more aligned with the modern reforms introduced after the Second Vatican Council, emphasizing a continuity with the spirit of the Council's liturgical directives. Yet, amidst this speculation, one crucial fact stands out. Pope Leo appears willing to listen. In an era where Vatican decisions often emerge from carefully controlled channels, this openness is profoundly meaningful. The very fact that cardinals known for their support of the traditional liturgy, like Cardinal Burke, have been able to engage directly with the Pope is a significant sign. It indicates that voices from the traditional wing of the Church are not being ignored, but rather are being granted an audience at the highest levels. It is within this atmosphere of quiet hope and careful reflection that Cardinal Burke chose to step forward once more, knowing the immense stakes involved. Cardinal Burke himself confirmed his personal conversation with Pope Leo about the future of the traditional Latin Mass. This private appeal is highly significant. For many Catholics deeply devoted to the ancient Roman Rite, it's a powerful sign that their concerns are being heard at the highest levels of the Church. For them, it represents a glimmer of hope that the spiritual nourishment they find in the traditional Mass might once again be fully accessible and celebrated without undue burdens. Conversely, this kind of direct appeal has stirred concern among more progressive voices in the Vatican, particularly those who strongly advocate for modern liturgies as the path forward for the Church, viewing any return to older forms as potentially undermining the reforms of Vatican II. Despite the absence of official Vatican statements on the meeting itself, Burke's decision to speak openly about his appeal has created ripples throughout the Catholic world. He recently delivered a powerful video address at a special event in London, the 60th anniversary of the Latin Mass Society. During his speech, Cardinal Burke revealed the heartfelt appeal he made to Pope Leo. His message was both a respectful plea and a firm stand, delivered with a sense of urgency. He implored Pope Leo to restore dignity and space to the traditional Mass, describing it as a form of worship that has spiritually nourished generations of saints, from the humblest faithful to the greatest doctors of the Church. Burke emphasized that this form of the liturgy is not merely a relic of the past. It remains a powerful source of grace, evangelization, and profound spiritual encounter for many Catholics today. And yet, he lamented, it is becoming increasingly marginalized, even ostracized, in church life. By raising this issue directly with the Pope, Burke hopes to open the door for meaningful change, a change that honors the Church's rich liturgical tradition while offering healing and unity to those who have felt left out or alienated by previous restrictions. Cardinal Burke did not mince words in his message. He expressed his profound hope that Pope Leo would follow in the footsteps of Pope Benedict XVI, especially concerning the restoration of respect and freedom for the traditional Latin Mass. Burke boldly described the current treatment of the traditional liturgy not just as a policy shift or a pastoral adjustment, but as an internal persecution within the Church. He asserted that this sentiment is shared by countless Catholics worldwide, who feel a genuine sense of spiritual hardship and injustice. For those devoted to the older form of the Mass, the restrictions imposed over the past few years haven't simply been about pastoral decisions or liturgical preferences. Many have experienced them as a profound form of hostility, a rejection of something deeply sacred and central to their faith lives, leaving them feeling like second-class citizens within their own spiritual home. Cardinal Burke shared this concern directly with the Pope, urging him to revisit Summorum Pontificum, the 2007 document issued by Pope Benedict that had given greater freedom to celebrate the traditional Mass, recognizing it as an extraordinary form of the one Roman rite. But Burke didn't stop there. He suggested not only restoring what Summorum Pontificum had put in place, but going even further, building on Benedict's vision of a church that is both wise and pastoral, rooted in tradition, yet open to unity and genuine spiritual flourishing. In Burke's eyes, this moment is not just about liturgy. It is a call to bring tradition back to the very heart of church life, a tradition that he believes has been too often pushed aside, misunderstood, or even actively suppressed by those currently guiding liturgical policy within various dioceses and even in the Vatican itself. He passionately articulated that genuine liturgical reform and continuity do not require the suppression of what has always been held as sacred. Cardinal Burke was also sharply critical of Traditionis Custodes, the document released under Pope Francis that significantly reduced access to the traditional Latin Mass. From its inception, Burke viewed the document as deeply troubling, not merely on a legal or canonical basis, but on a spiritual and theological one. He questioned not only its legal standing, pointing to perceived inconsistencies with previous church law, but also its underlying spirit, suggesting it did more to divide than to unite, creating unnecessary fractures within the mystical body of Christ. To him, this wasn't just a matter of canon law or church rules. It was about the very soul of Catholic worship itself, and the spiritual well-being of a significant portion of the faithful. He described Traditionis Custodes as a severe and revolutionary act, one that raised not only practical legal questions for bishops and priests, but also deeper theological concerns about the Church's understanding of its own liturgical heritage. In his view, the document clashes with the true meaning and purpose of the Church's liturgical tradition, which is meant to be a source of unity and holiness, not division and distress. Rather than addressing real pastoral needs, Burke believes it was driven by a narrow ideological approach to reform, one that has inadvertently created more confusion than clarity, and more pain than peace for countless souls. As a direct result of this document, Burke stated, "Many bishops around the world have adopted harsh restrictions, even in dioceses where there was no apparent pastoral need or where the traditional Latin Mass communities were thriving peacefully. These moves," he argues, "have not helped the faithful. On the contrary, they've deeply hurt them." In a recent interview, the Cardinal emphasized how profoundly many Catholics are suffering because of these changes. For them, The traditional Mass is not just an old ritual or an aesthetic preference. It's a spiritual treasure, a profound encounter with God, a form of worship that has nourished countless souls for generations, fostering deep reverence and a sense of the sacred. To deliberately stop people from accessing it, he said, is to take away something truly good and meaningful, something that continues to bring life and grace to many. And in his opinion, this is being done without any solid reason grounded in sound doctrine or genuine pastoral care for all members of the flock. That's precisely what has compelled him to speak directly and earnestly with Pope Leo. Burke is hoping that this new pontificate might allow for a fresh start, a new chapter where tradition and unity can go hand in hand, not as competing ideologies, but as complementary expressions of the Church's rich life. And he is not alone in this hope. From the very beginning, his concerns were shared by other respected leaders in the Church. One of them is Cardinal Robert Sarah, another well-known and highly regarded supporter of the traditional liturgy, who has frequently spoken about the importance of reverence and the sacred. Both men were among the first to respond positively and publicly to the election of Pope Leo, seeing in him a possible path forward, a chance for dialogue and healing. Their early support was more than just polite words. It was seen by many as a significant sign, an indication that perhaps, just perhaps, this time something real could change for the better. For many faithful Catholics around the world, what happens next will have a profound and lasting impact on how they live and celebrate their faith, shaping their spiritual lives for years to come. Other prominent voices have also spoken out on this crucial issue. One of the most outspoken is Bishop Athanasius Schneider, the auxiliary bishop of Astana, Kazakhstan. He has publicly appealed to Pope Leo, urging him to completely reverse Traditionis Custodes. For Bishop Schneider, the restrictions placed on the traditional Latin Mass are more than just unfair rules. They are, in his words, a deep injustice against a portion of God's people. He believes these limits also represent a rejection of the Church's own liturgical heritage, a deliberate turning away from a sacred patrimony. In his view, this is a serious wound in the life of the Church, causing immense spiritual pain and disunity. And the only way to heal it, he says, is to restore full freedom to what he calls the liturgy of all time, a liturgy that transcends cultural and historical moments due to its timeless beauty and profound connection to the divine. Schneider is not asking for special treatment for a select group, but for the Church to recognize the inherent value and spiritual richness of its traditional forms of worship and to allow them to flourish once again for the good of the entire Church. At the same time, questions continue to swirl around Pope Leo himself, particularly concerning his past relationship with the traditional Latin Mass. Some insiders claim that back when he was still a cardinal, he quietly celebrated the traditional Latin Mass, indicating a personal affinity for it. Others firmly deny this, saying there is no concrete evidence of such a connection, and that his background points more towards adherence to the Reformed liturgy. So far, nothing has been definitively confirmed either way, and the Vatican has maintained silence on these private details. But ultimately, the truth about his past may not be as important as the decisions he chooses to make now, as the Supreme Pontiff. What truly matters is the path Pope Leo will take in his leadership. Will he heed the earnest appeals of cardinals, bishops, and countless faithful Catholics who are deeply devoted to tradition? Or will he continue down the road set by his predecessor, maintaining the restrictions and divisions that have caused so much concern and anguish within the Church? This is the fundamental question that many Catholics are asking right now, and it is not a small one. In fact, it may become the central, defining issue of Pope Leo's entire pontificate. The way he handles this delicate and deeply felt liturgical debate, especially his relationship with the traditional Latin Mass, could shape not only the unity of the Church for generations to come, but also how his leadership is remembered in the annals of Church history. But this isn't only about liturgy, vestments, or rubrics. What's at stake here reaches much deeper. It's about the credibility and pastoral efficacy of Pope Leo's entire pontificate. For many Catholics, especially those who have felt alienated or even wounded by recent decisions regarding the liturgy, his leadership represents a rare and precious chance to repair what others, perhaps too quickly and carelessly, have broken. The Church is not just a set of doctrines or rituals. It is a living, breathing body made up of diverse people, ancient traditions, and a shared history that spans 2 millennia. When long-standing practices, deeply cherished by segments of the faithful, are dismissed or cast aside without careful thought or compassionate pastoral care, the damage isn't just symbolic. It's profoundly personal and deeply spiritual. In recent years, many Catholics devoted to the traditional Latin Mass have felt forgotten, even abandoned. Some have been pushed to the margins of their dioceses, their communities scattered, their liturgies restricted or relocated to less desirable venues with little explanation or pastoral justification. These decisions were often justified as necessary for unity, but paradoxically, they created greater division, drawing new, painful lines between those who are seen as acceptable and those who are not, between those whose liturgical preferences are affirmed and those whose are dismissed. This has caused real spiritual pain, fracturing communities and testing the faith of many. Now, under Pope Leo, there is a palpable sense of hope that the Church might take a different path, a path not of rupture, but of reconciliation. A path that doesn't seek to erase or diminish tradition, but embraces it as an integral, vibrant part of the Church's full identity and spiritual patrimony. Whether this profound healing will happen depends entirely on what the Pope chooses to do next. The next steps he takes, whether through public statements that signal a new direction, formal documents that ease current restrictions, or quiet internal decisions that cascade through the dioceses, will carry enormous weight. They will show the world, and indeed the entire Catholic faithful, what kind of leader he truly intends to be. Will he be a healer? A true shepherd who reaches out with compassion to the wounded parts of the Church and offers peace and understanding? Or will he follow the same course as before, allowing existing divisions to deepen further, potentially leading to greater disaffection? The answer will not only shape the future of the traditional Latin Mass, it may fundamentally shape the spiritual direction and internal coherence of the Church for an entire generation. In a time of profound confusion and rapid cultural upheaval, when the world seems to be spinning out of control, many Catholics are looking for clarity, stability, and enduring truth. They are not asking for special treatment or a privileged status for their chosen liturgy. They are asking simply to be seen, to be heard, and to be welcomed as full and cherished members of the Church's ongoing mission. If Pope Leo chooses to listen, to truly listen with an open heart and mind to these voices, his pontificate could be remembered as a monumental moment of restoration and profound unity, a true father to all his children. But if not, the sense of loss, frustration, and even betrayal could grow even more widespread, potentially leading to further fragmentation within the Church. That is why the coming months, and indeed years, are so incredibly important. This is not just a niche liturgical question. It is a question of leadership, of vision, and of the very soul of the Church. And the next decisions Pope Leo makes may echo far beyond the hallowed halls of the Vatican, reaching deeply into parishes, seminaries, families, and individual hearts all over the world. The Catholic Church stands at a profound crossroads, and in times like these, when the world is filled with noise, division, and dizzying rapid change, the Church is called to be something different, something steady, something rooted, something eternal. That's precisely what the traditional Latin Mass represents for so many believers. It's not just about the ancient language, the Gregorian chant, or the elaborate vestments. It's about continuity, It's about being connected to the unbroken chain of generations who came before us. The saints, the martyrs, the countless faithful who prayed the same prayers, heard the same scriptures, and encountered the same profound mystery of Christ in the sacred silence and timeless beauty of the ancient rite. For centuries, this form of worship was the spiritual heartbeat of the Latin Church, the very air many Catholics breathed. And even after the monumental reforms of the Second Vatican Council, it remained alive in quiet corners, sometimes actively supported, sometimes barely tolerated, but always cherished by those who found in it a profound sense of the sacred, the eternal, and the unchanging, transcendent presence of God. In recent years, the attempt to suppress it, or to treat it as a problem to be managed, has created immense confusion, unnecessary pain, and often bitter conflict within families and communities. What's even more striking is the growing number of young Catholics, many of whom were born long after Vatican II and have no nostalgic ties to the pre-conciliar era, who have discovered the traditional Mass and found in it a spiritual depth and beauty they never knew existed. Far from being stuck in the past, this younger generation has embraced it with profound joy, intellectual curiosity, and fervent devotion. They didn't grow up with it. They actively chose it, often at great personal sacrifice and against significant opposition. So the question must be asked with genuine pastoral concern: why should something that demonstrably inspires greater faith, deeper reverence for the Eucharist, stronger vocations to the priesthood and religious life, and a profound sense of the sacred, be treated as a problem, a threat, or an anomaly? Why should a Mass that has shaped saints, endured centuries of trials and tribulations, and consistently drawn people closer to God, be limited, questioned, or actively pushed aside? This is the deeper, more fundamental issue that Pope Leo must face, not just as a canonical administrator or a policymaker, but as a shepherd of souls, a compassionate father to all his children. His sacred role is not to favor one group over another, but to recognize where the Spirit is moving, where profound spiritual healing is needed, and where true unity can be built, not through coercive force or rigid uniformity, but through mutual understanding, genuine trust, and a shared love for Christ and His Church. The Church doesn't need more divisive policies. It desperately needs more understanding, more pastoral accompaniment, and more profound spiritual vision. And Pope Leo has an unprecedented opportunity, perhaps a once-in-a-generation opportunity, to bring unity not by eliminating what is sacred to some, but by restoring a rightful and honored space for everyone within the vast tapestry of Catholic life. Tradition and reform do not have to be enemies. Indeed, when handled with wisdom, discernment, and a deep love for Christ and His bride, the Church, they can exist together in harmony, enriching the entire mystical body and reminding the world that the Catholic faith is both ancient and ever new, eternally relevant. In this pivotal moment, silence is not neutrality. It is a choice with far-reaching consequences. Every delay, every decision not explicitly made, speaks just as loudly and often more painfully than any formal decree. That's why figures like Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Sarah, and Bishop Schneider have chosen to speak up, not to create further division, but precisely to prevent it from growing and festering. Their voices are not isolated. They are profound echoes of thousands upon thousands of faithful Catholics around the world who quietly carry this same concern in their hearts, often without a public platform to share it. But more than the pronouncements of bishops and theologians, it is the everyday faithful, the families striving to raise their children in the faith, the young adults seeking deeper meaning, the elderly holding on to the traditions that sustained them, the converts drawn by the beauty of the sacred, who are waiting for clarity, waiting for peace, waiting to be told, unequivocally, that their sincere love for tradition is not a burden to the Church, not a sign of disloyalty, but a precious gift to be treasured and integrated. They don't want conflict or factionalism. Above all, they want to belong, to be fully recognized and welcomed as part of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So, as the world watches and wonders, all eyes now turn to Pope Leo XIV. His next words, his next decisions, whether public or private, will not just shape canonical policies or liturgical directives. They will shape trust. They will shape whether millions of Catholics feel truly united or tragically forgotten. They will shape whether tradition is seen as an invaluable treasure to be preserved and passed on, or as a threat to be managed and eventually minimized. And for many, this is intensely personal. This is their parish, their family, their very faith identity, passed down through generations. What may seem like a small, arcane matter in the rarefied offices of the Vatican is to them a fundamental part of their spiritual home, their connection to God. And when your home, your spiritual sanctuary, is threatened or deliberately diminished, it hurts, deeply and personally. That's precisely why the opportunity for healing is so powerful, so immense under Pope Leo. He could be remembered by history as the pontiff who courageously bridged a painful divide, who truly welcomed all of his flock, not by erasing legitimate differences, but by honoring them as diverse expressions of the Catholic spirit. He could be the one who allowed the Church to breathe again, fully and deeply, with both lungs, the ancient and the new, tradition and reform, East and West. In the coming months, the choices made by the Holy Father will either reopen deep, festering wounds that have lingered for decades, or they will, God willing, begin the arduous but essential process of mending them. They will either deepen the current tensions and alienations within the Church, or they will, through grace and wisdom, bring the profound peace and reconciliation for which so many have prayed with fervent hearts. It won't be easy. The path of true spiritual leadership rarely is. It takes immense courage to reverse a course that has caused widespread distress. It takes profound humility to truly listen to voices that may challenge prevailing narratives. And it takes unwavering faith to trust that genuine unity can be built, not through rigid control or enforced uniformity, but through authentic love, patient dialogue, and a shared spiritual vision rooted in Christ. So, as this new and critical chapter unfolds, we pray for divine wisdom for Pope Leo, for understanding among all members of the faithful, and for the guiding presence of the Holy Spirit to navigate the Church through this moment of intense testing. Because what is at stake is far more than just liturgy. It is the very heart of what it means to be Catholic, to be part of a vast, sacred family, to honor the sacred, and to faithfully pass on the integral Catholic faith in its fullness, beauty, and truth to the generations yet to come. Pope Leo XIV has a momentous choice before him, and the world, both within and outside the Church, is watching with bated breath. In the end, this moment is not just about the past, it's profoundly about the future. A future where unity doesn't mean oppressive uniformity, and where tradition isn't treated as a threat to progress, but as an indispensable foundation upon which the Church can build, thrive, and fulfill its divine mission. Pope Leo now has the providential chance to bring healing where there has been division and light where there has been confusion. The decisions he makes in the weeks and months ahead will resonate more loudly and profoundly than any formal document or pronouncement. And for millions of faithful Catholics around the world, those decisions could very well mark the glorious beginning of a long-awaited renewal, or tragically, the continuation of a painful, prolonged silence.